Alrighty, just coming up to 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. Wanted to thank everybody in attendance, either virtually listening to the recording at a future time or attending in person, for coming out to our public open house regarding our new community improvement plan. I am going to introduce our consultants, Jill McDonald and Anita Scott with WSP. They're here today to do a little presentation for the public open house regarding the update of the community improvement plan process and where we're at with the draft community improvement plan. So I'll pass it over to Anita and Jill to begin the presentation.
Thanks so much, John. I will begin. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us, as John said, both in person and virtually now and when you view the subsequent recording. My name is Anita Sod, and I am a project manager with the consulting firm WSP, based out of Ottawa. And I'm joined here today by my colleague Jill McDonald, senior planner with WSP, based out of Halifax. Jill and I have been working with the town of Fort Frances since April of this year to undertake the review and update of the town's existing Community Improvement Plan, or CIP. We were in the community in June for the introductory public open house, and I'll also mention that over the last several years, Jill has worked closely with the town on the official plan and zoning bylaw review. So we are here today to present the draft Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, and specifically the suite of updated financial incentive programs that are proposed. And we look forward to hearing any feedback from property and business owners and residents, which can help inform any further updates to the CIP. Our presentation will explain the purpose of this open house. We'll provide an overview of CIPs in general and their community benefits, the success of the town's existing CIP and our CIP project work plan, and the community engagement that we've undertaken and future opportunities. We will also present the draft CIP vision and goals, the community improvement project area, and the program areas where the CIP is proposed to apply, as well as the summary of the various financial incentive programs that would be made available if the CIP is adopted by Council. And we'll conclude with next steps, after which we're happy to answer any questions. So the overall purpose of today's public open house is to present the updated draft CIP to the property and business owners and interested members of the public in the Fort Frances community. And we would like to confirm that the draft CIP reflects the needs and priorities in Fort Frances for community improvements and revitalization. Specifically, we want to confirm whether the proposed incentive programs meet the needs of property and business owners and would provide the right support to encourage these property and business owners to make CIP applications to provide financial assistance with undertaking improvements on their private properties. I will pass it over to Jill to review the benefits and what a CIP entails.
Okay, thanks, Anita. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. So a community improvement plan, also referred to as a CIP, it is a planning and economic development tool which is available to municipalities under the Ontario Municipal Act and the Ontario Planning Act legislation. So a CIP, it's used to promote community revitalization and helps to achieve economic, community planning, and urban development goals for things like beautification and attracting investment in local businesses. Through CIPs, municipalities can enable a wide range of programs and policies aimed at revitalizing targeted areas and encouraging development in specific areas within a community. For the most part, CIP programs are usually in the form of grants, which can assist property owners in improving their properties, such as revitalizing facades of buildings, signage and landscaping, or entire full site redevelopment, infill and intensification. CIPs can also be used to encourage housing development with a focus on housing affordability, as well as environmental cleanup and redevelopment of brownfields or previously contaminated sites. Under the CIPs, each of the grant programs are typically tailored to the local needs and goals identified in a municipality. And the CIP also supports municipal initiatives and projects which enable the municipality to be a leader in achieving community improvements. Where property owners see the municipality investing in the community, generally they're more motivated to do so on their own properties as well. So the graphic here on the screen just illustrates some of the things that can be included under programs for the CIP. So as I mentioned, so facade grants for buildings, different accessibility and design initiatives, street furniture and lighting, and building and rehabilitation. So the town of Fort Francis's existing CIP has been in effect since 2003, and it was last modified in 2008. So Fort Francis's existing CIP, it promotes economic development and revitalization through a series of financial incentive programs, which are available for property owners throughout the Community Improvement Project Area, or CIPA. So the current CIPA is comprised of 3 specific project areas, which are the resource development, Midtown Industrial, and the downtown core and waterfront. So together, these 3 project areas encompass the entire municipal boundary of Fort Francis. The existing CIP also, it includes 4 financial incentive programs, which are currently available in all 3 specific project areas and have been renewed as part of this CIP update. In the last number of years, between 2018 and 2023, 35 applications to the programs under the existing CIP were received of the town, and 12 of these community improvement projects have been completed. In the last 3 years, from 2024, 12 additional grants have been approved by the town under the current CIP. So the purpose of this CIP update, it's to better reflect the evolving economic development and community improvement needs and priorities of the town, and to align the CIP with the town's new official plan, which was approved last year, and as well as other recent municipal policies and strategies. As part of the CIP update, the Community Improvement Project Area, or CIPA, where CIP applies, and the financial incentive programs which are included in the CIP for eligible properties have also been reviewed. In discussions with the town, staff have identified several areas of focus for the CIP update to reflect current economic development and community improvement priorities. So some of these areas of focus include promoting and attracting investment in existing and new commercial businesses and industries, opportunities for new housing development, as well as encouraging tourism in the area. Other areas of focus include encouraging revitalization and development of underutilized or vacant properties, supporting the redevelopment of target areas that are identified for future development in the town's official plan, and finally, identifying municipal leadership initiatives that complement private investment and support town revitalization and beautification, such as streetscaping, wayfinding, and improvements to municipal infrastructure in the public realm. So just to provide an overview of the CIP update process and the work plan. So the project is being undertaken over the course of around 6 months, and it began in April of this year. So in stage 1 of the project, town staff informed the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that the town had initiated the CIP update, and the draft CIP was recently submitted to the ministry for their review. We'd just like to note that for clarity, the ministry is not the approval authority for the CIP, but they will provide review comments on the draft CIP for consideration by the town. As part of phase 1, the town also informed local Indigenous communities of the project and launched a project webpage on the town's website. In stage 2 of the project, we prepared a draft and final CIP background and recommendations report, as well as a community survey and a separate survey targeting property owners and business owners who may be future CIP applicants was launched, and this was hosted online via SurveyMonkey in June. Other key engagement activities in June included an introductory public open house in Fort Francis, a CIP visioning workshop with members of council, staff, and members of the local business and economic development community in the town and Rainy River District. A summary of all the input received from these engagement activities is included in our final background and recommendations report and has formed the development of the draft CIP. And this final background report is also published to the town's project web page for review. So right now we're in stage 3 of the project, final stage. So a draft CIP was prepared in July and made available for public review on the town's webpage. So this draft CIP we are presenting today at the public open house and as well at the upcoming statutory public meeting of council, which will be held next week on August 20th. Following these events, the CIP will be finalized and then presented to council for consideration of adoption at a council meeting, possibly early this fall. So moving into presentation of the draft CIP. So it's dated July 2026, and it's available on the town's project website for review if you want to take a look. So starting with the draft CIP vision and goals. So based on our discussions with participants at the CIP visioning workshop and feedback from the community obtained for the surveys that were held in June, we have developed a draft vision statement in the CIP shown on the screen. I'll read it out. So the town of Fort Frances will grow and prosper as a gateway to the Rainy River District, strengthening its role as a welcoming and thriving destination for businesses, services, tourism and recreation and investment opportunities. So this draft vision statement, it was prepared from collaboration with those that were at the workshop, from input received for the surveys and open house. And so this vision statement is draft. We do want to hear from you your thoughts on this today, if there's anything we may have missed here, but it really does provide the basis and foundation for the CIP as a whole. And working together with the vision statement, it's supported by a series of goals that reflect the key community priorities which are intended to be realized through community improvement projects funded in part by the CIP financial incentive programs, as well as the town's improvement projects that may be undertaken on public land and spaces as overlay for the CIP. So we've included the goals on this slide. They're summarized in the actual CIP document. They're just a bit longer. So the goals at a high level include implementing community improvements through a combination of municipal leadership and private investment, supporting revitalization, beautification, and tourism growth, prioritizing the development of diverse housing options, commercial and industrial uses, and infrastructure upgrades, encouraging the development of vacant and underutilized land and buildings, continuing the redevelopment of significant properties such as the Shevlin Woodyard, investing in enhanced accessibility and community safety, encouraging development on key corridors and at community gateways, including Highway 11, supporting existing and prospective businesses, and finally, prioritizing the approval of projects that provide community benefits. So once the CIP is adopted and it's implemented by the town, all future CIP applications will be reviewed against the vision and goals to ensure that they contribute to them. So as part of the CIP review, the town's existing CIPA, Community Improvement Project Area, where the CIP applies, has been reviewed and is proposed to be modified. So the proposed CIPA would include the entire municipal boundary, meaning that properties across the town may be eligible for CIP financial incentive programs, depending on the eligibility criteria outlined in the CIP. Further, from the CIPA, it would be broken down into 4 program areas where specific financial incentive programs are available. So these include the town-wide program area, so areas of the town and properties may be eligible for programs like the building and permit fees grant and certain housing programs. So that's shown on the map here as number 1. So that's the entire town boundary. Number 2, as shown on the map, is the downtown mixed use program area. And this comprises the area shown kind of with the turquoise hatch, number 2. These are properties within the downtown core as well as the Shevlin Woodyard. And these areas are primarily designated for mixed-use development in the town's official plan. Number 3 is the East and Gateway program area. So this includes properties located at the east and at the west gateways to the town along Highway 11. So shown with the orange hatch. These lands are primarily designated as highway commercial, and the official plan are envisioned to be developed with a mix of commercial and tourism uses. Finally, number 4 is the industrial program area. This is shown with the lime green hatch, more to the northern part of town. And it includes certain properties designated industrial employment in the official plan and are generally located north of the CN Rail Corridor and both sides of 8th Street between McIrvin Road and Cornwall Avenue. So I'll now pass it back to Anita, and she's going to review with us the proposed financial incentive programs in the updated draft CIP.
Thank you, Jill. So the draft CIP contains a series of 15 individual financial incentive programs, and each of these are available or would be available for properties that are located in one or more of the community improvement program areas that Jill just reviewed. So each of these financial incentive programs and their theme, you should see reflected in the goals that have been established in the draft CIP. So the 15 programs are grouped by theme, and there are 2 programs that pertain to municipal fees and property taxes. There are 3 programs proposed for housing incentives and 10 different programs to assist with various building and property improvements for primarily commercial, mixed use, and industrial properties. So under each of these programs in the draft CIP document, you'll see the program name, its purpose, eligible project costs, making up the actual types of improvements that property owners might undertake, and program details, including the maximum amount of financial assistance that may be available to successful applicants, as well as eligibility criteria specific to that program. Applicants can apply for more than one or multiple programs at the same time, most of which can be stacked. However, it's important to note that no 2 programs can be used to pay for the same eligible project cost. The CIP also contains a series of general eligibility criteria that applies to all applicants, regardless of which programs are being applied for. And also importantly, Council each year has sole discretion over the annual funding of these programs and the award of incentives. So Council is the ultimate approval authority to approve CIP applications and to award incentives to an applicant, unless Council delegates that authority to town staff at some point in the future. So the next few slides will provide a snapshot summary of the 15 proposed financial incentive programs. And I just want to note that similar summary information is provided at the display boards at this public open house, and as well on a 1-page handout that I believe should be available for any people in attendance to take away. But I do want to specify that the full program details are only contained in the actual draft CIP document, which, as Jill mentioned, is available for the public's review on the town's project webpage. So the first 2 financial incentive programs under the municipal theme are both available town-wide for eligible properties. The first being the Planning and Building Permit Fees Grant, which is intended to help offset the costs of required development application and permit fees that would be paid to the town to process development applications, for example, site plan control and obtaining a building permit. The next program is the Tax Increment Equivalent Grant, which may be a potentially high value grant for developers to receive a grant for the municipal property tax increases that could result from major property improvements or development or redevelopment of a property, and then MPAC's reassessment of that property after the improvements. So there would generally be a change in the assessment value of the property after the improvements have been created. And so this grant could provide an applicant up to 100% of the amount that their property tax will have increased by following development or redevelopment and reassessment of the property taxes for that property. And it could be paid to the owner each year for a maximum of 5 years, with the grant declining by 20% every year. The next 3 programs are proposed to incentivize new housing development across the town, and these include an additional residential units grant to assist property owners of single detached, semi-detached, or townhouse dwellings to develop an additional residential unit in accordance with the town's official plan and zoning bylaw permissions. So this could be a basement apartment or an upper story apartment or a garage conversion, for example, into a detached residential structure on the same lot as an existing single, semi, or townhouse. The next grant would be focused on the downtown and mixed-use program area, and it's called the Downtown Residential Conversion and Intensification Grant, and it's targeting the development of new residential units or improvements to the condition of existing residential units that are located above ground floor commercial uses on the upper stories downtown or at the rear of buildings in the downtown. And finally, a multi-unit housing grant for new residential development that includes 4 or more units. And a requirement here is that 25% of those new units would have to meet the definition of being an affordable residential unit, which is specified in the CIP and is also established in the provincial planning statement. And the next 10 programs in the draft CIP are proposed to assist with building and property improvements for commercial, mixed use, and industrial properties and buildings that are located either within the downtown mixed use program area, the East and West Gateway area, or the industrial program area. So the first grant is a grant to assist with accessibility improvements to existing commercial and mixed use properties and buildings. This could be automatic door openers, ramps, and other accessible improvements. There's also a beautification grant proposed, and this is really helping to offset the costs for downtown property owners with smaller cost improvements that really contribute to the sense of place and aesthetics in the downtown core. And that could be things like window and seasonal displays, lighting, the installation of seasonal landscape planters, and other smaller scale visual improvements. There is also a Brownfields Property Tax Assistance Program, and that is a provincial property tax assistance program to assist with the costs of cleaning up and redeveloping a brownfield property, which is a property that has had some type of previous use on it that resulted in contamination of the property, usually to do with soils. The next program is the Business Startup and Vacant Commercial Buildings Activation Grant, and this is really targeting properties in the downtown and mixed use program area and the East and West Gateway, and it's encouraging new business owners that might be moving in or renting a commercial or a commercial space with the cost of improving and renovating the interior of ground floor commercial uses. And this is targeting retail stores, restaurants, entertainment venues, and tourism businesses. The next program has a long list of eligible project costs, and it's called the Commercial Industrial Property Improvement Grant, and its purpose is to assist with interior and exterior improvements to commercial and industrial buildings. So this could include costs such as interior retrofits, landscaping, and paving. And based on community feedback that we've received, we've also included a crime prevention through environmental design, or CPTED grant. This is a term that's used to encompass urban design that deals with improving community safety and the sense of community safety through design measures. So some of the specific eligible project costs here for businesses would be the installation of site security improvements, such as cameras and the software and hardware that goes along with those cameras, as well as improved pedestrian-oriented lighting and fencing or access gates to entrances of businesses. We've also included an energy efficiency improvements grant that would assist with energy efficiency upgrades to commercial, industrial, and mixed-use buildings, such as the installation of Energy Star appliances, HVAC systems, new doors and windows, and so on. That would improve the energy efficiency and function of existing commercial and industrial and mixed-use buildings. And the last three programs are an environmental site assessment grant to assist with the costs of a property owner completing the required environmental studies that the town would require to understand the type of contamination on a property, as well as the costs of remediating those contaminated properties before they can be redeveloped. We've also included a facade and signage improvement grant, which is generally one of the programs in municipal CIPs that has the highest degree of uptake by CIP applicants and property and business owners. And that is to improve, to encourage aesthetic improvements to buildings and properties and renovate the facades, the brickwork, the cladding, windows and doors, and business signage to support the continued maintenance of the town's commercial building stock and to improve the appearance of buildings. And lastly, we are proposing a sidewalk patio and pop-ups grant, and this would support commercial businesses in establishing seasonal patios and potentially pop-up retail spaces on sidewalks or in on-street parking spaces that would be temporarily repurposed. And this would be in accordance with town policies and any required permits and licensing. So that is a very quick and high-level summary of the 15 programs included. Again, the full program details for anyone that may be interested in specific programs are contained in the draft CIP. And I will close out our presentation component just by thanking everyone again for attending today and listening to this presentation. We do look forward to continuing to work with council, town staff, and community members in integrating any feedback that we receive from this stage forward into the next version of the CIP. I'll just reiterate next steps that Jill previously mentioned, but the same version of this presentation and the draft CIP will be presented again at a statutory public meeting of council on August 20th next week. And this is a required meeting under the Planning Act where members of the public may attend and they can make specific written comments to council either in support or in opposition to the CIP or with any suggestions for improvements. And you can also make in-person delegations before council to speak to the draft CIP. So following this meeting and the public meeting next week, we will be preparing the final CIP, and it will be brought forward to council for consideration of adoption, I believe at a meeting in September that is currently being targeted. So if the CIP is adopted, there would be a 20-day appeal period under the Planning Act. And if the town does not receive any appeals, the town may begin marketing and implementing the CIP, and they will announce an application intake period. The final background report, draft CIP, and more information on the project can be found at this link here on the slide, which is also on the display boards, and that's the town's project webpage. And comments today can be shared with town staff, either verbally or by completing a comment sheet and submitted to John Burrows at the contact information on the slide. But Jill and I are also very happy to answer any questions now following our presentation. So thank you everyone for attending and for your attention.
Thank you, Jill, or thank you, Anita and Jill, for the presentation. So we will have a quick little period of time where members in attendance or attending online can ask our consultants any questions that they might have, but afterwards, me and Samantha will be available here in the council chambers to answer and speak with each and every one of you if you guys did have any further questions or comments. Pass it back to you guys and see if anybody would like to ask any questions.
Sure, I see a question online from Randy Toms. Go ahead, Randy.
Hi, just to identify myself, I'm also the news director for 931 The Board, local radio station here. I did have a question pertaining to the sidewalk pop-up patios and things like that. And maybe John can answer it better, or all of you can answer this.
Sure.
The question is, should that not be approved by council first before you add the incentives? Because I'm just wondering about the concern of our downtown area right now, where people are complaining a lot about the lack of parking. And if you take away parking spaces, that complaints are only going to get louder. And I wonder about the size of the sidewalks downtown that would permit pop-up patios and pop-up sales opportunities. Because I've seen during existing festivals that they have downtown that when businesses start setting up on the sidewalks, there's a lack of places for people to walk. So I'm just wondering, is that, like, are you putting the horse before the cart by allowing that grant to proceed before council accepts these pop-ups?
I'll take that question there, Randy.
Sure. Okay.
Yes, so obviously with our financial incentive programs, these are a catalog of incentives that the town would like to offer, subject to council's budget and discretion for approval. Now, we put in the sidewalk patio one as an initiative that we would like to see going forward, but we have flagged it for potentially not being viable until a later point where we have those bylaws and policies developed. Obviously, we have had inquest into the ability to do street side pop-up patios and patios on sidewalks. And we do want to make sure that we're positioned in a way that if we do proceed with bylaws and policies that would permit them going forward, that we have these provisions in place at our at our CIP development stage to be able to incentivize and assist with those projects. Further to that, with further development into Shevlin Woodyard and the potential for having a more appropriate pop-up patio usage, we did earmark this as a desirable financial incentive program to instigate and assist with those processes, understanding that at this time, council and administration in the town probably aren't going to commit any funding towards it until such a point that we have a proper permitting and policy for establishment of the pop-up patios.
And my other question relates to the residential benefits. If I want to put in a additional apartment in my garage, or a so-called little house or granny suite, I guess they call it, that has to be approved by council first, correct?
Do you want me to speak to that, John, or would you like to take it?
I'll let you speak to it first, and then
Sure.
I'll clean up anything that might be left outstanding.
Sure. So yes, you're correct that the permissions to implement an additional residential unit on a residential lot would first have to be approved at the building permit stage. So generally, this would be specified in the official plan policies that the town has, as well as the zoning bylaw. So if a property owner received approval for this type of development, they could also concurrently be working with town staff to apply for a CIP grant to assist with the costs of that improvement. But the CIP application would not replace the permissions, the planning and development permissions that the town would require to be in place before any construction of an additional residential unit were to take place.
Yes, and just further to that with a small little point, it says, or it outlines in our financial incentive plan policies that there are requirements for adherence to applicable legislation, the Ontario Building Code, and zoning conformity. So you would be looking, if you were to do a project like that with an additional residential unit, of first obtaining the approval for the building permit and obviously abiding by zoning provisions. But once that building permit has been issued and the application, or prior to the building permit issued, but getting the pre-approval on conformity. You'd be making application for the financial incentive program. Now, where we've changed things in the proposed draft CIP from our original one is we are proposing to have a scheduled intake of applications so that they can be properly considered during the budgeting period for council. And then furthermore, having council being able to approve the recommended and eligible applications that have come in within the budgeting cycle.
John, are we allowed to put in little houses right now? Or granny suites or whatever you call them?
Yes, so subject to obviously zoning compliance, but when we redid our official plan and zoning bylaw, especially in the R1 and R2 zones when it pertains to single detached dwellings, we've reduced the requirement for minimum lot coverage to be in line with the building code for the permissions of little houses and other forms of modular or prefabricated homes. So little houses, accessory dwelling units are permitted in both the R1 and R2 zones, subject to specific zoning requirements.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Yes, and I apologize, our consultants probably didn't hear that, but Alan Bradbury with the Times, question relating to the intake period and whether it's over the lifetime of the CIP. So yes, the proposal is to have an annual intake period with the option for an additional depending on budgetary capacity. So how we anticipate that working is we would have an application intake period at the end of the year going into the budgetary season. Where we would review applications to be deemed eligible and recommended to council. Those eligible applications would be calculated to be the recommended budgetary expenditure for it. And then once the budget's approved, notification would go out to those applicants or those application agents, advising them that they've been approved for X amount of funding or for which grant. And if some of those projects were not fully utilized for the available funding, and there was a surplus in the available funding that's been budgeted, we would look at other intake periods to supplement what's within budgetary approval, or further request to council for additional budgetary expenditures on prospective desirable projects. Alrighty, I'm going to call to see if anybody had any further questions regarding the presentation. And I'll call out 2 times, and then afterwards we're going to thank our consultants for attending, and we will still be around for a few minutes to have any further conversation or answer any questions for people in attendance. But I will put to call. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. And that was Alan Bradbury again. So question about how lame duck may affect the approval of the CIP. So we are anticipating that the draft CIP would come forward in September and be approved by the current council prior to the election period. Now, with the final CIP being approved, there may be a period where we have to wait for elections to conclude before we can actually bring the adopting bylaw forward. So with that, it is just any sort of approvals that can't be granted after the approval of the final CIP would wait for bylaw adoption to a later time where a council could proceed and continue with their approvals. Okay, I'm going to quickly call the first time again, but does anybody have any questions? Just one more time. Does anybody online or in person have any other questions? Okay, I'm seeing none. I want to thank everybody for coming out or attending virtually. We appreciate everybody's input and consideration into this project. We hope that if you weren't able to attend and you're listening to this recording, that you can reach out to the town with any comments, questions you may have over this process, as well as advising, again, as Anita and Jill had cited, we do have a public hearing that is available for the public or relevant agencies to come forward and ask questions in front of council, which will be considered as part of the final draft CIP. But I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, and I wanted to thank our consultants, Anita Scott and Jill McDonald, for attending virtually and providing us with this presentation. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks, everyone. And if I can just add, John, it would be ideal to receive any written or verbal comments, phone calls to town staff by the end of August, so that we can ensure that any feedback is captured in the next version of the CIP that would be presented to council. So again, that public meeting next Thursday, August 20th is the first opportunity, and then any written comments can certainly still be submitted following that, but we would appreciate by the end of August, please. Thank you. And thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Bye.
Bye.